Alex, when was the first time we met? Hold on, you're on mute.
We met in person, I believe it was June 5th, and it was your mastermind in London in South Bank. And just before that, I was enjoying a nice salmon and cream cheese bagel, anticipating meeting everyone. But at that time, I didn't really have an proper offer. I hadn't quite invested as much as I have now in terms of mentorships. Pretty apprehensive. Just woke up at 3 a.m. to go on the coach to go to Bristol, from Bristol to London, sorry. And I ended up going over all the way there. Was about to meet a ton of cool creatives, some amazing people, but I hadn't quite understood in full motion that I was about to meet as many people as I did and also gather some lifelong friends. But the main place that I met you was just a small dap up as soon as I walked in. Lovely welcoming smile with a one-on-one banner ready in his backpack to pull out. And yeah, it's a long explanation, but I met you at the mastermind which I attended when I was at one of the inflection points in my entrepreneurial journey for sure.
I remember I remember hearing that you'd obviously travelled, what was it, 3, 4 hours to come down to the mastermind. Are you glad you did?
Of course, yeah. I woke up at, believe it was like 3 4 a.m. I was walking over to the bus stop thinking this is way too early to be getting up. Probably shouldn't probably should have booked a later ticket or done a different method of transportation, stayed overnight. But no, I'm really glad I did it in the end because it made me pretty energetic and it was the opener to a lot of the conversations and it made a lot of the social interactions really fun. Yeah, very much glad I traveled all that way because it made it more special.
100%. So you said that day and that time was one of your inflection points in your entrepreneurial journey. Where did that take you then? So tell me what happened on that day of the mastermind in terms of maybe potentially signing your first client. Tell me what happened there. But then also, where did it take you from that moment?
Cool. Good question. Where the mastermind took me was after interacting with a ton of amazing people, creatives that really expanded my horizons on the family that I felt like I was a part of when we were all sat there, we did the one-on-one pose and we were holding up the banner, we're all smiling into the camera and just speaking to all of them like I still speak to all of them on the weekly basis now because they're like such cool guys. That took me to a place where I was able to realize how many people there were. Like there was an abundance of people that I could speak to that needed my help, that had the problems that I could solve. And within that, I spoke to a guy who, lovely fella, I worked with him in full. He's been through my program, and I ended up doing like a one pager after we finished the mastermind. Got some sick ass value. Went to a restaurant, and I essentially started chatting to him, and he was like, I genuinely was just like, "Yo, what problems do you have?" And I wrote a one pager to solve that problem, which was essentially his lack of ability to focus and his essential, like he was drifting between being able to focus and being in a rut. It was a vicious cycle. And I wrote my one page on how exactly he could solve that and how to get out of his own head when it came to all of that. And that was my first experience of leading with value in a situation where I had just met this person. Like he had no knowledge of who I was or vice versa within that situation. And I met him because we had brought together a load of amazing people. And one of those people desperately needed help on getting back into mental shape in order to make the impact they wanted to make in their business. And I think that was really valuable to have that brought together. And that opportunity sprang up purely because we got everyone in that room and onwards to that restaurant.
100%. I smiled when I figured that out afterwards. When you be able to help them, that's so perfect. That's the goal of bringing everyone together. How many followers did you have around that time or around the mastermind day?
It was around 300. I remember I was at 430 at my low peak. And so it was around 360, 370. And I gained an extra 15 just by speaking to everyone in that room. But yeah,
And how many followers are you on today then?
I'm on 2,346.
Nice. So there's been a pretty explosive growth throughout that time.
Correct.
Yeah. So I want to go into kind of how that worked in a second, but first of all, what did you take from the mastermind in terms of being yourself and telling your story that you feel helped you grow that extra 1,700 followers?
Well, there was a big part of that mastermind which went into essentially the buyer's journey, and you can take them through that with a story. And a lot of people don't necessarily understand like sales cycles, but it brought me into a space where I could really feel like I had the ability to let people in to my sales cycle just purely through telling my story and building that trust within that. Because the pillars of someone buying from you is that they know you like more than they did before, and they really bought into you. People buying from people is a huge aspect, and I think the people, that aspect really shone through once I took away from that mastermind that there is a cycle that everyone goes through, and you can bring them through with the art of storytelling. There was a framework which was the hero's journey you put through on a document and you printed out, and we demoed it. And the guy who I signed as a client was the case study you did live, and that was really impactful to me because I could see in real time how you could take someone from not knowing who you are to now being really bought into the concept of who you are, and that leads to more trust, and that leads to flies in my face on a video call, and I don't know if you can see him, he's a little fucker, and more people who trust you enough to with their problems and for you to solve them. So that was a real takeaway for me, and that really allowed me to get the results, which I believe fueled my content.
Yeah, because
Just putting that
I mean, I see that exact journey in the content that you have put out now. Like if we looked at that video of yours that got 100K and the few around it that did incredibly well, what you were doing there was either sharing that exact story and framework for yourself or for someone else. How
yeah,
many? How many? It was around that week when you really started to kind of explode. I remember being at the Run Club with you there in Bali at the same time. How many book calls did you take that week?
that week I took, it was around like 5 or 6 minimum a day. So that week was up in the 40s of
Yeah.
like calls that I had hopped on, and I think I booked from that a total of 81, which some of which I cancelled, some of which I filtered through.
Hmm.
I'm still speaking to some of those leads to this day,
Yeah.
and it's been since September 15th that occurred. So that's a decent while, and it's now we're in November 21st. So it's definitely something that I was put in the most beautiful of deep ends from that admin.
Content does too well. You have too many people to speak to.
Yeah, first world problem at its finest.
100%. I have a slightly different question that I think is kind of a benefit of storytelling and a benefit of one that I don't think many people speak about. Um, how do you carry yourself differently? How do you speak to people that you meet in person now? Do you tell them stories instead of just saying what you do?
I guess you could say that. There's a big part of me that was a bit selfish in terms of like I wasn't focusing on the aspects of me that were I would call now socially acceptable. And so I was always trying to get on the other side of the other person in some sort of selfish way. And now I'm more focused on just like really connecting with someone. I know the fact that if you connect with someone on their own story, their own issues they overcame, I think that's like such a great way to be able to connect with someone. And I think now that I speak more in content than I did before I started posting content. For the sole reason of like I've really learned to just pace myself and tell great stories. I'm carrying myself in a way where I'm proud of. I think when you're proud of something, you tell a story about it.
Yeah. And linking on from that, then, in this info creator space, however you want to call it, people, bunch of people posting content, a bunch of people having offers. How do you think that belief of being one of one and telling your story has helped you cut through people having similar offers, right? Having different similar stories. Like, how do you feel like being yourself has helped you stand out and give yourself like a wedge in that game and really solidify yourself in there?
I think we all start off copying others in certain aspects. We all go through identity shifts, but in the the wrong plane of existence. We focus too much on what other people are doing. So by focusing on the fact that I have a unique offering, I am me and myself, and only I can provide the value that I can. No one else can do that. I have so many unique approaches to what I can do to be able to help people. That only came from purely embracing that through reps and content. Like when you think about how, if you look at my profile, originally I was doing like productivity coaching. I was essentially going through people's funnels and how they got people to essentially buy a course, and started posting content that would end up like being a funnel for digital products. And I had no idea why until I started looking at myself and going, am I the person who does this? No, uniquely me means more on the lines of helping people overcome their own limitations with them in their own mindset. And when I posted more content aligned with that, I think being who I was before June in that mastermind, I just started to post more content after that, aligned with who I actually knew I was. And I was so afraid of acting like I was the outlier. Like, because when I was in Bristol beforehand, I was sort of stuck in this environment where it was punishable to be different. And there was small little talks and adjustments I made through posting content that allowed me to be more authentic to the version of the person who I could have the opportunity to be every day, but never took the opportunity without seeing it. Like every piece of content I posted, I started to see a little bit more of me. Don't know if it was practice. Not sure if it was the me flipping a switch in my own brain and then posting from that thought process, but definitely that was a longer explanation. But I genuinely think it's changed my life to be able to go from uni student focused on what everyone else was doing and was building on a path that he didn't really lay out himself, to just posting content that every other video started to breathe more life into who I was. So yeah. Do you think that answers the main inquiry?
It does. It very much does. I have two questions from that. One, which is on the business side of things, which I'll ask in a second, but one is on the so how do you find that? Would you say that you're in an environment where you were struggling to be yourself because you were surrounded by people who didn't necessarily encourage that? Like, how much would you say community and being around other people who are trying to be themselves helped you be yourself?
It was tenfold. You have the duty when you're in that environment to be the outlier, and you can only learn from people who have become the outlier, the one of one, when you fully go towards environments like that. You go to communities, you could be in an online course and meet someone else who's doing exactly what you're setting out to do or aspiring to do. The person you daydream about, the person who doesn't have to get bogged down by that environment. And I think it's so important to just have a model and a mirror on who you need to be in order to go past that and be the outlier. 100%. I think there's no investment better than focusing on your environment, especially when you're starting out, because it kills most dreams and most people's potentials of being one of one.
Mm, yeah, that's so well put. That's so well put. In the okay, so in the business side of things, then how is this content that works, content that grows, content that gets people to actually listen to help the business?
Immensely. I hop on calls with people now, and I post videos about me flying my parents out to Bali, and like before we've even discussed what the agenda of the call is, they're asking me questions about it. They're really like, congratulations, man. I really rate that. It's beautiful. And there's more and more of me being put out there, so I barely have to sell. People already connected to me, and then the people buying people cycle kicks in. They're no longer thinking about what what's this guy's deliverables, what does this guy uh, what is how does this guy's mechanism work. It's more like, I really like this guy. I think he can solve my problems, and I know that I have a problem that aligns with who this guy is. More than ever, I love his content. I think that really resonates with me.
Alex, that's so good to hear. I mean, it's sell people on you before you sell people on the offer, really, isn't it? And that obviously comes through content. That's perfect to hear. I got one last question for you then. I appreciate you hopping on and doing this and coming out and sharing this with the one of one community and people who are joining the one of one, potentially becoming one of one. The last thing I have to say is, what do you have to say about being one of one? What does it mean to you, and how can you share that to someone else?
It means going further enough to see yourself in the mirror from afar, which means that your own light is so potent and you've stopped letting everyone else dim it, starting your shining, and you put yourself out there so much that you've gone so far, but you can still see yourself for who you truly are, no matter what distance you've covered. And I genuinely think that when you look behind you, you're going to see a ton of people who are also looking back and going, holy fuck, I really know myself more than anyone. And I'm so glad that I've taken the steps to become that person and to really be who I am. We're all connecting back to our true selves and getting rid of all the limitations one by one. And I really think that focusing on yourself and becoming that unique individual that puts more of themselves out every single day and puts the pursuit of themselves first, you'll never look back with regret. And that's my what being one of one means to me. And for every definition you can come up with yourself, I think your definition is the most important.
Mm. That's so well put, bro. That is so well put. Thank you, man. That's boys. This is the power of one of one. You know, helping people be themselves so they can help people in a way that no one else can. Alex, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story, and hopefully it inspires more people to be one of one as well. Alex, thank you very much, and see you guys soon.